need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, our entire relationship has been a short squeeze. It's Andy Greenwald!
I love it. I love when you talk hedgy to me.
Andy, we have very special guests on today. We got Konrad K and Mickey Down, the creators of Industry, to come on and talk to me a little bit about this whole Robinhood, GameStop, Wall Street Bets debacle. They were very, very, very generous with their time. I really appreciate them coming on to talk a little bit about how this might intersect with Industry or might not. And we're also going to cover a bunch of other stuff: Thrones, WandaVision, Lupin, new show on Hulu called The Sister, a couple other things. So let's just get into The Watch.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Greenwald.
Hey.
How's your stock portfolio, brother?
Not nearly as robust as I realize it ought to be. If I had just listened to Thick Boy 69, I could be a 20,000 air right now.
So you're not a day trader. You don't do any day trading.
No, I don't understand any of it, like profoundly. And I think that, I know that Mickey and Konrad are going to come on. One of the reasons why I like Industry is because it washes over me. I don't know what they're talking about.
Right. This has been an amazing week of what I feel like is like very like underground culture rising up into the mainstream. Right. I know that we usually don't talk about matters like this on The Watch. We make passing references to it, but this kind of reminds me of like when a band would break into pop music charts back when we used to cover music more frequently. Like,
right.
Seeing this story, and obviously it's affecting people in very real ways, and it's a stage in which we're seeing a lot of levers of power being exercised to the benefit of the extremely wealthy, and that is now on Front Street as much as it ever has been. And I think you're seeing a lot of people getting very, very, very fucking angry about that, which is really interesting to watch. But yeah, I was just curious whether or not you had been following the story, because I asked you a couple of days ago, like, how's your Bed Bath & Beyond position? And you just were like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I completely didn't understand what this was. I mean, I tried not to be extremely online, but especially over the last year,
you were definitely extremely online. You're just not in like Wall Street Bets Reddit.
Well, no, I try, meaning like literally, I actually enjoy the feeling of being pulled away, whether it's into a meeting or I'm writing something or whatever, and I'm not looking for a sustained period of time. And then when you go back and you see things that are trending, and there's like a feeling of relief. And when it was GameStop, I was like, great. I bet my friend Chris might know something about that, since he has a lot of leisure time, to play video games.
I don't have a lot of leisure time.
But I was thrilled not to know what it was. And then I kind of heard that, those Redditors were at it again. Uh-huh. But what I didn't understand was that this was like the first virtual Molotov cocktail tossed in the great proletariat revolution of the Biden administration. You know what I mean? So there's so many layers to this.
I need to ask you something. What's going to happen when your imitation of your dad becomes your actual personality? What do we do then?
It's a great question. Well,
it is happening. The way you said Redditors is exactly how your dad would say Redditors.
Well, he doesn't. He's never said any of those syllables.
But you're inheriting that. Like you will be the next, the heir to the throne of these Redditors.
Yeah.
And they're Robin Hooding.
Looking down my nose at things that I don't understand is what I was born to do. You know what I mean? So I just don't have the age or the gravitas, and unfortunately, I'm still clinging to some misguided desire to actually know about stuff. But I think that will go in time, and then I can finally, then I can become my father. I think that's great.
This whole story. You talk about trying to get offline. This is why I can't get offline. This is perhaps why I will never log off, because in like the 20 minutes that I looked at Twitter this morning, I saw Dave Portnoy arguing with the new Mets owner. I saw Ted Cruz try to dap up AOC, and then AOC being like, "You tried to have me murdered, so go fuck yourself."
Yeah.
And then like
I like that
bunch of dudes being like, "I will never sell my Bed Bath & Beyond stock. You can pry it out of my cold dead hands." And it's like, I just keep thinking about the actual places that are being invested in. And it's like, I have to say this. I support small businesses. I support any brick and mortar business. I believe I love the fact that people are out there buying stuff. You will never see me at a Bed Bath & Beyond again for the rest of my life. Like, not because of this, but because I am not going to like go up and be like, well, this gentleman just sniffed a towel and put it up against his face. I think I'll try that towel. Yeah.
I thought you were admitting something that I was excited to talk to you about, which is I've learned that there's actually, this is a sidebar on a sidebar, sorry, but I think there are two types of people in the world, and they can be subdivided by their reaction to a simple question, which is, do you want to go to the Container Store?
Oh, right. Okay.
And I learned this.
You don't.
There is no place on earth I dislike more than the Container Store.
So did you know that my wife loves the Container Store more than anything in the world? Right.
So does mine. Yeah. No, this is how it works, or doesn't work.
Your wife and my wife are like Renton and Sick Boy, but instead of heroin, it's getting fucking Norwegian sliding shelves to then put boxes inside of.
And to me, the Container Store is itself a container of nothing but recriminations, expectation, and stress. Because all I see is receptacles for things I haven't put away yet.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. Okay. But so I thought that's why you were sort of grouping Bed Bath & Beyond in there, because bed, great, comfortable. Bath, sounds lovely. Beyond, you're losing me. You know what I mean? Like, where's this going?
You and I, we've spent a lot of time in the real world. We've known each other for almost a quarter century.
Life experience.
No, we've done a lot of time in South Jersey and Philadelphia and the Providence, Rhode Island area, Boston, now out, all the boroughs of Brooklyn with the exception of Staten Island. And now we were out here together in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen a lot of things. We've seen a lot of stores. We've seen a lot of retail operations.
Yeah, seen them come and go.
I don't want to move the market here. That's not what we do on The Watch. What we do is move the marketplace of ideas. We don't move the market. But if there was a place that you could protect from getting shorted out of existence,
right?
What would it be? Like what shitty chain would you?
Does it have to be a chain? Because
but don't be like this like artisanal charcuterie place that like only I know about. Like,
do you know a good one? I gotta say, there are not many good cheese stores in Los Angeles. Is that what we're talking about? No, I mean I don't know where to go with you down this road, because like I would protect small restaurants and like Skylight Books.
No.
But
all
if I was younger,
to them, I'm talking about like what things in and around the Liberty Place food court are you trying to protect?
My parents' apartment? Sam Goody? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm asking about. Uh-huh. Like, should we go long on Pacific Sun Video?
Oh, yeah. Oh, because we could do this. I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, great idea. Second of all, it is kind of a moment. I mean, all things that become fixations on the internet are essentially referendums on how everything is meaningless. And we are all circling the drain of our own existence. This particularly so, because more than like Neil deGrasse Tyson being like, nope, look there. Like, this is really showing us that everything is phony to a very profound degree.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can see the ripples everywhere, such as, our buddy Sean Fantasy just tweeted this, like 5 days ago, AMC, not the channel, is like, yeah, we don't think we're going to make it. Like, we're pretty much, it's a wrap on us because no one's going to ever go to a movie theater again. Now they're like, I think we're in a strong position going forward. Why? No good reason.
Right.
But it's hard not to go
because
down.
Dudes who usually share screenshots of their Warzone kills are like, I'm buying AMC at $2 a share.
Yes. And not necessarily because they want to go to movie theaters, but because they want to screw over the cast of The Big Short, which is fine with me.
Right.
2, you then begin to see, sorry, now I'm sounding like the guy who handed you the socialist newspaper on campus freshman year of college, but like you begin to see the ripples in everything that you're reading, not just stories that are like, Mr. Day Trade 69 or whatever, like feels that it's not just that. You see it there's a story on Deadline today about NBC Universal, which, I am under contract there. They had an earnings call saying like X number of people are watching The Office, more engagement with The Office now that it's on Peacock, and Peacock has 33 million subscribers. And then like almost as an aside, it's like Peacock is scheduled to lose $2 billion this year and next year each.
It's not funny. I don't know why.
No, but it's like, okay. Like, it's just bizarre. And I'm not even taking shots at that company or that business strategy or anything. I don't understand it.
33% more people are watching The Office on Peacock than were watching it when.
I don't understand the numbers. Basically, I think it has to do more with the percentage of users engaging with it, which is also probably to do with the fact that there are 200 million people on Netflix who were, not all of whom were watching. So I don't even want to get into the weeds. Like, I'm sure people are watching The Office. Good show. It's just that we do live in a world where it can be in the 8th paragraph that there was a projected $4 billion loss, and that's not the subject of the story, right? So all of this is to say, Chris, Goody got it, right? Like, if Goody can get it,
so
Goody
you were
got it.
You were a Goody guy, not a strawberries guy.
Yeah, there weren't any strawberries near me. There was.
Kaya, have you heard of any of these establishments?
No, I have no clue what you guys are
Well, Kaya's from the West Coast. They probably had their own.
But Kaya, did you ever physically buy a compact disc?
Yes, I physically bought compact discs.
But did you buy it at like a novelty store as a gag, or did you buy it because you were looking forward to the music? Okay,
no, good. I went into an electronics store and bought compact discs. Like the old school, like electronic stores. Like
Radio Shack? Was it a mistake? What do you mean? What's an electronics store?
Like a Radio Shack.
So you bought a blank CD-ROM.
Was there any music on the CDs, or were you buying like CD-ROMs?
Are you talking about like blank CD discs?
No, I'm talking about, did you ever buy like an Aerosmith CD or something?
I don't know maybe I didn't buy them, but we had them around the house when I was a kid.
Oh, look, Father's getting into his old melodies again. And you're like, the plaintive sound of Janie's got a gun. Walks out of Dad's office.
I got an iPod when I was like 10.
Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
Okay, this was a very long way of me doing a joke about how I want to go long on the store Lids.
Talk to me about it. Tell me your. Okay, because I'm Shark Tank, a show I've never seen, and you're
no. Here,
the fish.
I feel like Lids is not only a good hat store. You can just get any hat from any of the professional sports teams, fitted or snapback.
Okay.
But as a young man, Lids was a staple of the community. I used to go to the Liberty Place Mall. We would get Chick-fil-A, and then we would go to Lids because the two guys at Lids who worked there, for some reason they needed two guys working at Lids.
Well, you need one guy to put on the lid and the other one to secure the base of the human.
They had one guy working the register and another guy would be like, I'll get that Oakland A's hat that happens to be on the 10th shelf if you need me to. My little 5'1" middle schooler who has $18 to spend. But we used to go in there, and that was my first encounter with malt liquor, was at Lids.
Excuse me?
Because these guys used to pour 40s into giant Chick-fil-A cups and drink all day. And I don't know, it was a very formative experience.
were you involved in this grift? Like, did you bring them the Chick-fil-A cups? Because you're really being specific about the businesses.
No, I think they too all enjoyed Chick-fil-A. And then once they were done drinking Sprite or whatever out of their Chick-fil-A cups, they would then pour 40s in.
Did you ever point out that Chick-fil-A's problematic political stances? And
this
how
was
that
like
might
1991. So
I mean, no surprise to anyone that your boy was like, please don't order Domino's because...
You were?
Yes, because their founder is rabidly anti-choice. I mean, yeah, I was really... I don't think this is surprising anyone. So I have another thing to bring up that is possibly a digression. Should we play the Mickey and Konrad talk since this is the stocks portion?
We can do it. Let's do that because it's only 15 minutes. So I'm
so jealous. I hope you told them I said hi.
Of course I did. You know, and we jerked each other around here for a while. So let's have some people who actually know what they're talking about. Mickey and Konrad were very, very kind to give me 15 minutes on a random Thursday to talk about this fucking insane story. Industry is one of my favorite shows. These guys are some of our favorite guests. So let's just get into my interview with Mickey and Konrad about this ridiculous GameStop story. So right now I'm joined by the Watch's financial sector correspondents. It's Mickey Down and Konrad K, the creators of Industry. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out to join me today to talk about this story that I don't think any of us truly understand, the GameStop, Robinhood, Wall Street bets, hedge fund meltdown. First of all, Konrad, Mickey, how are you guys doing?
We're good, man. Look, if you want to understand the story, you've come to the wrong people.
That's 100% true.
I'm feeling good about it. To us, I've been stuck in it the whole week. I've been texting Konrad really furiously about it from the very start of it because I've been burnt by this already, and also had some sort of quite good moments as well. But I sort of didn't realize the stock market went up and down, which is a bit of an issue.
If you want to get a real sense of this being like a proper bubble, the fact that Mickey is texting me about what equities he's buying is like. It's like, I mean, and I've had my friends from home, like guys I went to school with who like work in totally irrelevant industries going, mate, should I get in on this? Like, what am I missing? It's absolutely wild.
I've been texting Konrad saying things like, mate, I'm long Nokia. What are we going to do? The fundamentals are strong.
I feel like Nokia still has vibes in England though. Like when I'm over there, I feel like I still see the odd Nokia around.
That's right, actually.
Yeah.
And, actually, I think they re-released the 3310, which is the first phone I ever got. And it was just sort of a lot of people of my generation's first phone. But I'm not sure that's going to affect the stock price.
No, that was really funny. When I was at Morgan Stanley, that was a stock. So that was back in 2012, 2015. That was a stock that everybody hated. It had absolutely massive short base. And because obviously they didn't have an iPhone competitor. So they were like, it was one of the most structurally broken equity stories, and now everyone's piling into it 7 years later. It's so funny.
You guys are acting like you don't know what's happening, but you know what's happening. Listen to you, 2013 Nokia shorts.
No, we really don't. We really actively don't.
Okay, I'll start with Mickey here. So I wanted to have you guys on just because this is just such an amazing story, but I also was really curious when something like this emerges and it pierces into like the mainstream like this. Do you guys have like a Slack channel or a WhatsApp with like the guys from Succession and the guys from Billions and Oliver Stone, and you're all just trying to decide who gets to take what angle on this?
That's exactly right. I actually spoke to Oliver this morning about it, and he was like, I've done 2 films and set in that world already, and like, I will give you this one.
Right.
No, not at all. I mean, the thing is that it was sort of breaking on Reddit and stuff before it became sort of mainstream news. And my friend, who's a journalist, actually told me about it first, and we started trading on it, and we thought, okay, this is going to be quite fun. And it was only like, and I actually said to Konrad, well, this is actually make a really good story, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. And then literally like, I guess it was 2 days later or something, then it suddenly exploded, and we were getting all these Twitter DMs and mentions saying, guys, you've got to do this. I mean, I say all these. I think Brian Koppelman said he had about 700, and I think we probably had about 7 between us.
Konrad, were you like aware of the culture of Wall Street bets and like Reddit trading and Robinhood and stuff like that? I'm sure you are, but like, were you aware it was such a huge thing?
Not market moving. I mean, I had no idea that it had the power to move stock prices the way it was doing. I mean, it's funny, me and Mickey did actually talk up when we were planning season 2, we were talking about new clients and stuff, and market manipulation was definitely an angle that we were sort of thinking about. But to be honest, I had no idea. Like, obviously the retail sector is a huge, big part of the equity market, but for it to take cohesive action like this and actually make stuff move in a way that gets governments and the whole hedge fund community talking, I genuinely thought was like pie in the sky. I thought it was like the sort of thing that happens obviously in film and not in real life. And like anything, like you could do the best dramatization of this, it'll never ever be as compelling as the real life version of it, which is kind of the bind of it.
I can't imagine somebody. I mean, you could do a big short about this like 5 years from now, but I was curious whether you guys feel like this is sort of like where the limitations of series television kind of come in, because it's like you can't just like up and shoot something right now. You can't necessarily reflect a moment. So you almost have to wait for a while for everything to shake out. Is that right, Mickey?
I think you're right, actually. I mean, we're in a sort of quite good position in that we're sort of right in the weeds of writing at the moment. We need stories based in this world. So it was actually quite an attractive proposition when this came up. But yeah, it feels like it's such a of the moment thing, and like who knows that when the show finally airs, I don't know when that's going to be, but when it airs and we've done a story set in this world, and like we've done a story about a Reddit stock that people might just not want to see it. But to be honest, I'm agreeing with Konrad that we also want stories that they marry Main Street and Wall Street, and this is just the perfect version of that. And it's dramatic, and it's full of like quite colorful characters, whether you see them or not. And that, it feels like it's such a 2021 version of Wall Street trading that I feel like it would be remiss to not even consider maybe putting it in the fair.
Well, Konrad, I was thinking about how much this is an online story, and so much of the juice from your show is about people being around other people. But this is like a perfect quarantine story, because I do think that to some extent, there's just like people with a lot more time on their hands, spending a lot of that time on their phones and fucking around on Robinhood. Like, it's weird to have this be an almost virtual thing rather than people screaming at people on trading floors.
So true. It's so true. I mean, hopefully we do it quite well in some aspects of the first season of the show, but like it's always so hard. I often think this about hacker dramas as well, because I always think hacker dramas the idea of them is always so fantastic. And then you realize that what you're actually shooting is people staring at lines of code on a screen. And it's really hard to dramatize and do well. And I felt a little bit about that, like that when we were writing Harper's Trade in 104. I was like, oh my God, is this going to play well? Like she's obviously, but then obviously it was like through the greens and reds and people could understand the stakes. But I think, I mean, there's so much screen stuff in the first season, and it feels like we could do a really good version of it. What would excite me about that story is what Mickey said, is the kind of Main Street, Wall Street thing, which is like the idea of linking people in their ivory towers or their glass box offices to people in their mother's basements punting this stuff around. I think it's just really, really interesting to see how interconnected all that stuff is. It's kind of terrifying, actually. How interconnected it all is.
I mean, I think also the thing that makes this such a fascinating story is the fact that it seems like in some ways it started off as a lark for some people or a little bit of a troll. And now it's become this like literally like a Robin Hood story. It's become like, robbing the rich to give to the poor. It's about like taking down these hedge funds. But I think that there's the sort of dangerous and also like fascinating part about it is that that there's going to be another shoe to drop, and that they're like as we're recording now, they've just they suspended trading on GameStop, on Robinhood, and people are freaking out. And now, like if you look at Twitter, it's almost incomprehensible where this story stands right now. Do you think, Mickey? Do you think that there's like a darker left turn that this story takes?
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, there's the potential for people to lose a lot of money, and not just, I'm not talking about hedge funds that have short positions. I'm talking about actual, retail investors, should we say? Like people who, there are people that, I've seen people on Reddit saying, should I take out loads of money or take out a huge loan and put it on GameStop? And like, that feels absolutely mad to me. And like, obviously people want to be at the bottom of a bubble, and they want to guess buy the dip. And Chris, I've had it open the whole day, so I'm slightly obsessed by it. But it dipped massively earlier, and people were still saying, "This is the dip. This is the dip. Buy it now. Pile in." And like, who knows? It could absolutely crash tomorrow, and people could lose a lot of money.
The thing that strikes me is a little bit bogus is the turn the story's taken in the last 24 hours, which is the idea that like these accounts, these sort of retail accounts are being stopped out of actually trading their positions by the platforms that got them in the first place, which is like, obviously coming from some sort of top-down pressure from people who obviously believe in free markets, but only believe in free markets when they're the ones benefiting from them, which strikes me as, I mean, it's like that is pointing to really quite dangerous sort of coalition
and
of power
and
at the top.
so transparent abuse of power that as well. And I think there's going to be a huge investigation to what's happened in the.
Oh my God! I mean, there are hedge fund guys on CNBC today who are just like, yeah, this isn't how it's supposed to work. I'm changing the rules at the last second. Konrad, I wanted to ask you. So for me, there's another layer to this story, which is that the guy who's backing the original hedge fund who was short on GameStop is this dude, Steve Cohen, who also owns the New York Mets. And as a Philadelphia Phillies fan, watching this guy bleed out a little bit is like incredibly important to me. This would be the equivalent for you as a Liverpool fan of watching the Glazers lose billions in this trade. So can you speak, like, there is like a weird thing where you start to have like your favorite characters involved in these stories, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. I think the Glazers have taken out an incredible amount of debt to fund their many, many years at Man United, which have turned increasingly fallow, obviously, which is really great and music to everybody's ears. I don't know. I find the real life personality aspect of this is always just totally fascinating. Steve Cohen obviously was like quite a big influence, I think, on Billions.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there is a kind of, I guess there is an element of Schadenfreude, but then the problem with it is sometimes you feel like it's very unclear to me who the winners and losers are out of this situation. So it's kind of like, 1 minute it's almost a moment to moment thing where you feel like Main Street's winning over Wall Street and then the hedge funds are getting screwed out of it. But I'm not, I think there are very many powerful hedge fund players who I guarantee you get out of the right side of this and making a lot of money.
Aren't the winners just the individuals that make like a little bit of money at the end of it?
Yeah.
They make like $200.
I mean, like if you look around and granted, some of it could be like bullshit and these fake stories, but there are people who are like, I was able to pay for like my dog's surgery from my GameStop earnings, or I was able to like pay off a student debt with my GameStop earnings. So it's interesting to see how it's like sucking in all of these stresses and anxieties that people have in this country, especially right now. The last thing I wanted to ask you is that there is like this part about this that is so fascinating to me is the specific stocks that people are investing in, like a GameStop, which I haven't really thought about in like 10 years or 15 years since like the last time I bought like Max Payne at a store or something, or like Grand Theft Auto. What is like the GameStop in England that you guys would like to pump up? Like what is like the brick and mortar?
Dixon's.
Wow, you didn't have to think about that at all. What's Dixon's?
It's like a high street retailer that sells
I don't think it
electronics
exists anymore, man. I think it's the world now. I'm really sorry to say that, but I think it doesn't exist.
I was literally thinking of there were all these. I mean, these are structurally short, broken companies that like obviously everything's moved online and they've kind of died these really slow deaths. I think Dixon was another one of my Morgan Stanley kind of overhangs where I just remember that being an absolutely hated stock when I was there.
I wouldn't want to manipulate the market, Chris. That would be illegal.
I know that would. We don't want to do that.
But if you're listening, everyone, just pile into Nokia. I'm really long it.
And as the watch's financial correspondents, obviously this is like a market moving interview, so we've got to be very careful about what we say.
No, we're actually live streaming now onto CNBC. I forgot to mention that before I called you guys. I think we know what Daria's second season plot arc is going to be now. She is going to be like a basement Reddit troll lord who's buying into Dixon's. So I want to thank Mickey and Konrad from Industry for calling in. This was a real pleasure. I thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us again.
Anytime. Honestly, anytime. We love this show.
Take care, guys. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Okay, we're back. Thank you again to Mickey and Konrad.
Chris, yes, thank you to Mickey and Konrad. I can't wait for some viral story to break during the hours where I'm available to do an interview.
What are those hours?
I'll let you know once I find some. Chris, speaking of hours, this is what I did want to bring this up in a public forum because last night, it was a Wednesday, and it's a very typical Wednesday for us in Los Angeles in pandemic times, or really any times, when Chris texts me, as he's wont to do, and it's like, are you watching the Sixers? Now, this is not necessarily, you don't need to be a sports guy or gal to relate to the story, but that's our hometown team. Love them. Love watching sports. But the one of the hardest things, a lot of people who are sports fans move to the West Coast and they're like, great, NFL football starts so early. Like, we don't have to wait all day. You can get it out of the way, then you can actually, have an afternoon. They don't think about the timing of East Coast teams for the parents. Because now all basketball and baseball games that I would like to watch all start at around 4 p.m.
Right.
4 p.m. It's not just prime, like getting dinner or picking up kids from school back when kids were allowed to go to school. But specifically when Chris checked in with me, that was the moment when my daughter's episode of Nailed It, she's not on it, that she was watching. She's very into the show. How come you weren't watching, Chris? Why were you supporting her baking fails? She did ask me very seriously
my daughter's
the other
episode
day.
of Big Little Lies was on.
She said, she asked me, would you go on Nailed It with me?
Mm-hmm. Tell people what Nailed It is. And when
Nailed
I say people, I mean me.
Oh, great. Yes. It's one of those things I didn't know about either. So it's one of Netflix's most popular shows. Might be more popular than Bridgerton. I don't know.
Do you think so?
No, I just feel like this stuff really moves needles. And so I'm always a little dubious when Netflix is like, guess what?
A blockbuster show.
It is. I don't mean to throw shade on it too much. I just mean that whenever we get these kind of opaque, now this is our biggest thing.
Yes.
It's a little bit of salt. So Nailed It is basically a good-spirited, all-ages show about baking fails, hosted by a very funny improv comedian and performer, Nicole Byer. And basically, there are 3 amateur bakers, home bakers, people who like to bake, come on, and are immediately asked to do something impossible. Like, they're given a very short amount of time to recreate like a 6-layer cake that's a tribute to the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise or whatever. There is no way they can succeed. And that's kind of the joke. And they get, they're all good sports about it and they do their best. And then they get a prize for being the best of the worst. And this combines, it's very good natured. And our friend, Jason Mantzoukas, is a frequent guest.
Is he really?
And is now, I mean, we're always indebted to him because he's a lovely person and we adore him. But when I casually dropped to my children that I know that guy, they looked at me with a level of respect that I didn't think I was ever going to get again. Like, it's the kind of look that you used to get when they didn't know how to walk and you help them not fall and then it's just gone. But they were very impressed by this. So it's a very popular show. People love it. I don't love it because it combines 2 of my least favorite things in competition shows, which is desserts, no interest, and amateurism.
Wait, you don't like dessert?
No.
Okay. That's weird.
You know this about me.
I think I did know this about you. I have a couple of friends who are like, I'm more
I'm
of
a salty
like
guy.
Yeah, salty guy. So dessert time.
But beyond that, I don't really love baking on competition shows or like Top Chef because it's more of a science. It's exact.
Yeah, right.
You can't really like freestyle. So anyway, all of this was to say, so we've covered that show now on our podcast. If you've got kids, you should watch it with them. That's really
the
like
headline.
It.
The headline is Chris Ryan is long on lids. Andy Greenwald is hedging on Nailed It.
It's a really smart. I mean, it's a really smart show and franchise, and it's one of the reasons why. I mean, let's pretend this is a real segment on our podcast, The Watch. It's one of the reasons why Bella Bajaria, who is in charge of Unscripted on Netflix, is now in charge of Netflix original programming. Okay. Because this was just kind of like threading a needle in such a smart way and inventing a franchise and eating Food Network's lunch or dessert, I guess in this case. And not only was it a big hit here, and the type of thing they can just churn out episodes for cheap and make a ton of them, they have them in every country. So it was a big success for them and a big success in my household. Anyway, the answer to Chris's text was, no, I can't watch my beloved 76ers play the Lakers. I just can't do it at this time. Like, as soon as the show's over, It's bath time. But then so Chris was like, that's fine as long as I am your one source. So
Yeah,
you were
I was
going
like,
to be.
I want to be your Newsmax, but for sports. Like, I only want you to come to me and I want to be able to peddle like crazy narratives.
You're going to be my Mike Lindell, basically.
I'm
right?
your My Pillow guy.
You're my Pillow guy. So then a totally freak occurrence happened. Like when like those two planets were near each other and everyone looked up and pretended they could see something special the other week, but they were all lying.
Like built visors out of milk cartons and stuff.
Yeah, that's all. It was all nonsense. Anyway, the show ended. My children were eating dessert and my wife was on the phone. And I was like, everything's coming up, Andy. I can do this. So I sat down. I was like, girls, you want to watch a basketball game with me? And they were like, yes, hooray. They didn't care. The TV was going back on. And I was like, my team is playing a Los Angeles team. And both my children were like, yay, Dodgers. And I was like, no, it's basketball. And they were like, yay, Dodgers. So this is on me. We turned the game on. And I kid you not, 5 seconds elapse. The 5 seconds that it takes for me to say, my team is the one in the red. For my older daughter to say, go blue. Blue is the good team. Your team is terrible. This is what happened. Like, they are now bigger Lakers fans than Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Like, just because I turned it on.
They're holding like gold chains at Staples Center courtside being like, Lakers, baby, Lakers.
And it was amazing. And I think that it's worth noting. I know this has been a long detour on Daddington Island, but it's worth saying.
I have no idea what we're talking about. This is great.
It's worth saying two things. One, for people who weren't following the game, like as second I turned it on, the Lakers immediately went on a 14-0 run and took the lead with 11 seconds left. And I had to sit there being like, while my children danced and sang happiness. And I was like, even my older daughter, I was like, that guy, Joel Embiid, we saw him once in person on the streets of Philadelphia. And my daughter's response was, he's lucky he can score the baskets. I was like, why are you trash talking? He's a nice guy. Anyway, then the Sixers won.
Okay.
You know, with a last second beautiful basket from
Tobias.
A player who we've never doubted, Tobias Harris.
Yeah.
Really a really solid contract.
You and I long on Tobias.
Very much so. He is the lids of the NBA, if you will. The game, quite literally, stopped with him. Thank you. Anyway, so our team won. And what is generations of unhealthy sports fandom teach us? What do we do in that moment? What we are meant to do is leap, celebrate, yelp. But one can't do that as a parent. You just have to model better behavior. So I smiled and I said, well, that was a good game. Not according to them. So I just put this into context because I generally believe that having children makes things better.
Sure.
But in this case, in 16
this is the exception
minutes
that proves
elapsed
the rule.
time, they took something that means a great deal to me, wadded it into a ball of garbage, and lit fire to it in the bottom of my soul.
What would have been your comeback? Like, could you have been like, just so you know, like no Pixar movie is real? Like, could you, like, could you have done to like sort of take the air out of the situation?
Oh, I could have been like, yeah, I think the Harry Potter movies are bad. I just could have done that and just ruined my home, but I can't do that.
I just sincerely can't remember why we got off on this, Jag, but I did want to talk to you about a couple of other relatively relevant TV things. Is that okay? Okay.
I mean, are you sure? Because I feel like me telling you about last night, there's more
No, I felt like
bone.
I had a reason why we got off on this, and I was going to say something else to you. Oh, the reason why I was asking about this in the first place is I thought you were arriving at, and then after the game, I was looking for something to watch.
That is true. Also, that is true.
Yeah.
But that was after they went to bed.
Okay. So I do want to talk about a couple of other things. One is the apparent scaling up of the Game of Thrones universe. So there's been announcements this week. One was more of a rumor that they were going to adapt the Dunk and Egg novellas into a series, and the Dunk and Egg stories are beloved by Game of Thrones aficionados, and that takes place about 90 years before the show. So the Song of Ice and Fire that we know. And
to be clear, I did learn much later after we did all of our Game of Thrones coverage that people thought that we were referring to a guy named Benny Offenweiss, when we would say Benioff and Weiss, who are the showrunners. So I want to be clear. It's not dunk and egg like a sandwich you can get in Boston.
Right.
It's dunk
and
egg.
Yes. And then they are also they're developing, apparently, HBO's developing a Game of Thrones animated series, which I think brings some forefront some interesting questions about like how grimy does Game of Thrones need to be Game of Thrones? Mm-hmm. But in any case, that would presumably be a side story, right? And then I noticed also that WandaVision, unlike the first few weeks where, they had some pretty brief, somewhat high concept, but ultimately not particularly informative trailers for the first batch of episodes that came out before the show aired, that this week they have put out a trailer that is very much like, you've hung with us. Now shit is about to get real. Like, thank you for indulging in all these sort of high concept homages to various decades of sitcoms, which I think that they will continue to do. But here's Tiana Paris outside of the black and white world, clearly dealing with some sort of government agency. Here's like a couple of people flying around. Here's Catherine Hahn seeming sincerely emotional about a situation, almost as a signal or a hat tip to the idea that, hey, this was a little bit of a gamble on our part for the first three, but if you've stuck with us, the payoff is about to come. We can talk about either of those things individually. And then I actually have something to say about both of these things that I noticed. Yeah. Which is, has it occurred to you that Star Wars, which is currently doing Mandalorian, it's got Mandalorian, and then I'll have Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian takes place in the years after Return of the Jedi.
Right.
A lot of the shows that they have pitched or that are coming soon, say Cassian Andor or Obi-Wan, all in the past. WandaVision, while it remains to be seen when it takes place, one would have to imagine after Endgame, has yet to suggest what the world is like after Endgame, after the death of Tony Stark. It's basically still like kind of this weird parallel world. Game of Thrones, they're talking about they've got House of the Dragon filming, which is a prequel. And they're talking about doing Dunk and Egg, which is also a prequel. Have you noticed that all of our major franchises, Lord of the Rings, also going to be in the Second Age, way before Fellowship of the Ring, are all in the past, are all looking backwards, are all traveling backwards rather than taking that great leap into the unknown where they say, what happens after Sauron? What happens after Thanos? What happens after the fall of the First Order?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons for that. One, was just baked into your question, which is into the unknown. Shouts to Elsa. That is not what these major corporations want from their only sure things or the closest things to sure things that they have. They want to have something on their docket, on their production calendar, on their release timeline that they can rely on to generate the massive profits or subs or whatever the metric is that they need just to continue to exist and to prove to shareholders they should exist. So that's what these things are, and first and foremost. Maybe from a creative standpoint, I think you could make the argument that the goal is not to rob the original thing of its importance within the larger expanded universe as it is built around it. Meaning, if a story like Lord of the Rings, for example, that is basically, it was written, of course, first, but then the movies suggested that the stakes couldn't be higher for the world. It was an existential, once in a whatever event, that it all was leading up to this, all the ages of men and hobbits and elves. I don't really remember the story, but I think I'm right.
You got it.
As soon as you say, but then something else happened that was worse, are you stepping on the power of the story that came before? So on some level, you could suggest that it's sort of creative respect to kind of just mine other things in the past around it. But the Game of Thrones thing, let's go through these piece by piece, right? Game of Thrones thing, we said even when we were covering it before we started doing the after shows, just in the very first year or two, we knew from the conversation around the books and from talking to Jason and Mallory that there was a lot more there.
Yeah.
And not just a lot more there, a lot of beloved, established ideas, stories, themes, eras that would lend themselves potentially to other types of storytelling too, right? Like the dunk and egg stories, from what I understand, are sort of fun, right? They're like pleasant, which is not a word I would use to describe a lot of the main series of Game of Thrones. So it was inevitable that they were going to do that sort of thing. The other thing that I would say that is inevitable and worth noting as more projects begin to be announced or leak out, to bring it back to something I mentioned earlier, but also in the HBO Max universe, the other news this week was that, though they denied it, that the Harry Potter universe is being mined for television IP. And the answer to that is, of course. Yeah. Of course it is. I mean, you have to understand that, like, not many of these companies don't get that many swings at stuff, or they don't get that many golden geese. And if they have them, there are people, well-paid people, whose jobs it is to just take the meetings, hear the pitches, just constantly keep the pots on a low simmer in the hopes that something is going to catch. So both stories were true. Like, there definitely are many, many Harry Potter projects in various levels of conversation. They weren't lying when they said there's no showrunner, there's no take. Yeah, sure. But there are many people who've had the meetings, and that's just going to continue in all of these shared universes, because that's the world we live in and the business that we are now in. The last point we should get into a little bit is the WandaVision one. Kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
One of the things that's different and is worth noting about these projects as they exist on streaming services, as opposed to as comic books or broadcast TV shows, which which only a few of them were, or movies, is that they know absolutely everything about who's watching them, how they're watching them, and why instantly.
Yes.
And knowing what we know about both Disney and Disney Plus, which is to say that Disney is the richest and most dominant entertainment company of our time, and Disney Plus is wildly successful with subscriber base much higher than anyone ever imagined. To me, that means they have a lot of rope. You know what I mean? Like, they can take some mini L's or let things develop. This suggests that they're worried about this show.
I was going to ask you that. I know that this is like concern trolling, but to your point about them probably having a lot of data about who's watching this, they probably also know how people are watching it. And they know whether or not people are finishing episodes, or I dare say they would know whether or not I skip 10 seconds ahead sometimes. You know, like
they do know that.
Yeah. And I would imagine that you can't necessarily change horses midstream and do a different marketing plan for a show. I am sure that they planned on reinforcing WandaVision's importance to the MCU at a certain point in this season. I just find it interesting that you and I, who are both to varying degrees fans of WandaVision, have also voiced, this has nothing to do with us, but have voiced the fact that we're like, not a lot is happening. You know what I mean? Like, this is a cool idea. It's very well done. The performances are pretty great, but the idea of waiting 7 days for 29 more minutes of this is a little bit funky. And I noticed this past week, not only did this trailer come out, but Jack Schaefer did an interview and
she's the showrunner,
and emphasized the importance of post-credit stingers and that we should keep an eye on those in the weeks to come. Yeah.
Post like immediate credits, or the post 6 minutes of like dudes in Atlanta?
I thought that there was going to be one every week, because every week when they start the credits with like 7 minutes left in the video, I'm like, did they fit a short film in at the end here? Like, how many? And I think it's because they do the credits in every language for some reason. But still, it was notable to me that they were like, the tone of that trailer that they put out this week was very much like WandaVision's importance to the MCU is only just being discovered.
This is the danger. And, you know, maybe we are perpetually Charlie Brown with the football here with this, because we have spent multiple weeks talking about the importance of The Mandalorian, or at least as we saw the importance of The Mandalorian as finally breaking free from the yoke of Skywalkerdom and suggesting that there are different types of stories to tell here, which is something that you and I believe is necessary for the long-term survival of the franchise, or definitely our long-term interest in it. And then Luke Skywalker shows up.
Yep.
Similarly here, I'll put it this way. There's no world where WandaVision is going to be considered anything less than a modest success, and probably quite higher than that. I really like it. I enjoy it. I think it's going to get better, or could get better. But I think it's probably safe to say that the ground shifted very, very radically under this project's feet, in a way that probably is worth highlighting.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, in the world where the show was conceived of and greenlit, Kevin Feige and everyone else at Marvel are operating from such a deep bench and such a position of strength that they can do some odd things on the margins, like a show that spends 3 episodes lovingly recreating classic sitcoms that were on TV before Kaya's parents were watching TV, I imagine. That is a little bit different than the world that the show actually premiered into. Not just that it is not on purpose the first Marvel TV show. It was supposed to come after what I believe will be the much more movie conventional Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was released into a world in which there had been no Marvel movies at all this year, and a question mark as to when we'll see them again, right? And so I think the idea was always going to be this complete dominant strategy where there's the A team in the movie theaters, and then the B plus team on the TV, and then like the B team of the stuff that maybe probably you and I might like even more than the other stuff ultimately. Or maybe it's the stuff that Kevin Feige is really most excited about, or who knows. But that was also a world where we were supposed to have seen Black Widow by now, and probably had Phase 4 or 5 or whatever it is announced by now. And
yeah, we would have had Black Widow.
And,
I don't know if Eternals was supposed to come out before Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I can't remember what the original release slate was, but yes, we would have had other stuff.
I guess all of that is to say, it's odd to me unless there really is, either they're overreacting, maybe they're stir crazy, or just crazy like all of us are post-pandemic. But it was a rare moment, and maybe we're reading too much into like a special trailer, but it read like a strange moment of public panic about what is the only guaranteed bankable brand.
You think about what happened in the first
today.
episode of Mandalorian is that even though I think if you took a step back and were like, if you thought about the first 3 or 4 episodes in the first season, you'd be like, oh, okay, they are going back to the sort of wagon train, rawhide style adventure of the week Western and applying it to Star Wars. But they still had Baby Yoda. Like they still dropped that huge bomb on us where they were like, this fucking thing is in this show. So there is definitely something important. WandaVision's Baby Yoda is just these couple of like weird fugue states that Wanda slips into. And even those don't have the resonance with people that some character like that would. To do that, they would have to have that voice on the radio be Tony Stark's.
Yes, it's not giving us any new piece.
Right.
Not just any sense of connection, which is a different thing. It's not giving us any new piece. I think you could get a little bit high-minded and be like, oh, the piece it's giving us is that there is actually flexibility and room in this gigantic fictional universe for, formalist play. Like, great. I like that. But that's in no way the same as being like, here is something that you are going to fall in love with in the way that you fell in love with the very first stirrings of this story in the case of Star Wars 40 years ago. In this case, I guess 10, 12 years ago.
Right.
So it's different, and it's a different bet. And I'm not really worried about those crazy kids over at Marvel. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, nobody's shorting them.
But I thought that was noteworthy too.
Should we talk about Lupin and the sister?
Yes, and I have one of, and I also do want to tell you something. I know you've been waiting almost 24 hours to hear, which is what I watched last night.
Oh, yeah.
You're on the edge of your seat, but we should do a little.
I just wanted to tell you a little bit about this show, The Sister, which I don't think you're going to watch. It's a 4-episode limited series on Hulu. Stars Russell Tovey, who, if anybody saw, Looking and Years, is a really fun actor. Like I really enjoy watching him, and it's written by Neil Cross, who did Luther and is obviously a very successful showrunner. It is about a guy who marries the sister of a woman who he may have had a hand in her death, like this woman's death. So he winds up, you learn over the first couple of episodes, there's only 4, but
did he marry her on purpose because he did that, or he finds out that
he had a role in this woman's death, then gets really into her sister. They wind up getting married.
Yikes.
Yikes central.
Oof.
And then a secret from this guy's past arrives at his doorstep to unravel it all.
He killed his wife's sister?
Yeah, it's basically...
Did I just figure out the show?
So the thing that arrives from his past is a guy named Bob.
Oh,
This guy Bob comes
maybe
to
I've
his
got Kai
door.
on the mind. I thought the thing that came to the house from the past was an Aerosmith CD in a long box.
No, but
And the guy is like, "What's this?"
I just wanted to shout this show out because even though it's deeply flawed, I'm finding it very entertaining. I also want to say this show does something that is a pet peeve of mine and does it so much that it has kind of transcended itself into performance art, and that is direct address. I'm fairly certain this show was shot during the pandemic because often there's only two people in a scene and they are inexplicably like 9 feet apart. And Russell Tovey calls this character Bob by his first name in every other sentence. And he's like, Bob, what are you talking about, Bob? You're mad, Bob. We can't do that, Bob. And I'm like, I fucking know that the only other guy in this room is named Bob. I've got closed captioning turned on. You don't have to fucking say it. I want to be able to go back into, I think there should be a setting in Hulu to take direct address out of the closed captioning. Like you shouldn't,
great.
I shouldn't have to see Bob every scene. That being said, it's a very entertaining show. It's completely wacky. And if anybody is looking for something that's like a little bit like The Killing and a little bit like X-Files, dig in. It's 4 episodes. They're only about 45 minutes each. And it's like, you'll finish it in 2 days.
Wow. Okay. That's good. Look, I feel like we're being very servicey. So here's what I want to do. There's 2 things that I want to touch on. And I think that there's a workable framework for our conversation about them. And what I'd like to suggest, and this is reusing something that I said just moments before, but this time doing it intentionally as opposed to the way I usually do it on this podcast when I get 6 words stuck in my head over the course of 45 minutes. The other moment I said, maybe we are Charlie Brown with the football, right? And that we keep making the same mistake. We keep thinking Lucy's going to hold the football and she doesn't. You know, I started writing recaps for Vulture in like 2009. So I guess that was my first TV writing. And then as a TV critic and whatever this is now that I do. You'd think I would have learned some stuff. And I don't know if I have. And I'm here to say mea culpa. A positive example and a negative example. The positive example is the new NBC comedy, Mr. Mayor, which is what I watched last night. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the first 2 episodes. This is the new show from Tina Fey and Robert Carlock, the team that made 30 Rock, and Kimmy Schmidt, and made one of the most fundamental and basic errors in TV criticism, which is talking about a comedy after 2 episodes.
Yep.
Throw away the first couple episodes.
Which you said in our first discussion, Mr. Mayor, you were like, all comedies, they should throw out the first 5 episodes and start from there.
Well, that's because Mike Schur said it to me, so I was just quoting someone who's much smarter about it. But even so, I was like, it infected me, and I was like, maybe it's just, I was like, maybe this supporting cast isn't up to snuff. Maybe it just feels like Ted Danson is still doing Good Place. Is Holly Hunter really committed to doing this with this much of her time in her life? And the answer to all of that is maybe none of that matters if Tina Fey is writing your show, because the 4th episode of Mr. Mayor, which aired last week,
and the new one's tonight.
It involves a road trip, many things. It involves a road trip that Bobby Moynihan and Holly Hunter take to Sacramento, which includes visiting the Lady Bird gift shop. Written by the first episode, solely written by Tina Fey, or credited to Tina Fey. Obviously, it's a room written thing, and they touch every script. This is the episode where a show figures out what it is, and it is so funny, guys. We don't talk a lot of comedies on here because what else are you supposed to say?
You're just a guy who loves to laugh, and nobody knows this about you.
I LOL multiple times.
Yeah.
It is an exceptional, it's great. 21 minutes, with that same land speed record for jokes that they had in 30 Rock. And suddenly I'm like, oh, everyone in this cast is good, actually. Oh, yeah. They figured out how to make fun of Los Angeles, even from the Upper West Side, actually. It's pretty great. And it made me really, really, really happy. And if it's on NBC, you can watch it on Peacock or Hulu, as I found out. So 1 mea culpa. Second mea culpa, Chris, that we should know better is it's always risky to weigh in with very strong opinions of a show based only on less than half of it.
Thank God we don't ever do that.
So couple weeks ago, we covered the Netflix's international phenomenon, Lupin. And yeah, I can paraphrase this here. We were just thrilled by it. Mainly because, especially the first episode, it suggested a show that was going to be just dazzling and charming and relatively light, featuring a star-making, charismatic performance by Omar Sy. And, just it had a lot of prestige weight tacked to it, but it essentially felt like a lighthearted heist show. And I think I probably said, like, the only thing that I hope is that it's more of the heist and less of the kind of leaden backstory that mars a lot of so-called prestige TV. Guys, je regrette. In fact, it's not really a heist show after the first 2 episodes. It is mostly a ponderous exercise in backstory, flashback, and revenge. And it bums me out. It really bummed me out. I know there's 5 more episodes coming in the summer.
Yep.
It's still built around a great star. It still has Paris in the background. But that thing where it's just like, I don't actually care how he met his ex-wife. I don't need to know how they met in school. That's fine. It's fine. They seem to get along well now. You know what I mean? Not everything in the present, and maybe this ties into our Lord of the Rings show conversation, like not everything in the present has to be profoundly defined by and then explicated by events in the past. And so these episodes where now the guy who a moment ago, 2 episodes ago, was swaggering out of the Louvre with this massive jewel heist. And now he's just like, tell me the truth about mon père. Like, let it go, dude. Go steal something cool. Go be Thomas Crown.
Maybe that's season 2. You know what I mean? Maybe the next batch, they get a little bit more light on their feet. And they're like, we have to move on from the personal revenge stuff.
It's just interesting to watch. This is the darker flip side to the conversation we had about
I haven't had a chance to catch
also,
up with it because I watched the first 2, but I haven't got a chance to finish the season yet. This guy, Bob, is killing me.
I told you, arrête, Chris. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Save yourself. But that, like, we, some of us, maybe those of us who, like, are still thinking about, like, the international, like, maybe like the independent cinema or international cinema, like this idea that, oh, well, if,
did
like
you
a
just
French
say
movie.
Some of us who are still thinking of international cinema?
I meant like us. Like we, okay.
No, I know, but like I'm still like reeling from the fact that you are like,
I didn't
it's
mean
me
my
and
new,
Agnes Varda, and we are fucking protecting.
I have a club called The Gleaners and I. It is just about Agnes Varda films I haven't seen, but I remember the titles of that I can make jokes about. No, I just meant that, like, there might be a little bit of a knee-jerk thing for some among us, I'll say me, who are it's just like, oh, well, a French film is going to be a little bit smarter and more, a little more challenging or demanding. And that's also because the French movies that came here would go to, like, the Ritz, in Philadelphia and be the art house cinema. We didn't see the Drek. And now that we've internationalized television, we've also very much internationalized some of our worst storytelling traits as well. And, like, I know I've told everyone to watch Call My Agent. Call My Agent is delightful. It's super delightful for 2 seasons.
Uh-huh.
And then it, like, crams in 19 of the worst unforced American TV errors imaginable into the last season. Seasons.
Like what? Like when T.R. Knight gets hit by a bus on Grey's Anatomy or something?
Whoa, spoiler alert. Thank God that settled it, though, and he'd never be back on the show, right?
Yes.
No, I just mean, like, this is a challenging, fascinating character. Let's give her a baby. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, now we have to service that storyline. This guy is kind of interesting because his personal life is a mess, but his work life is fulfilling. Let's have a girlfriend become his one true pairing, thus freezing him in place, and he can never have any other relationships. It's just about getting back to that one. That kind of stuff, where a show sort of circles back in on itself and becomes only about
I like that
itself.
You're blaming America for this. This is good.
America first. That's what that means, right? Blame America first.
America is like, we make you do season 6 Grey's Anatomy stuff in your French TV shows. We should wrap it up there. We'll be back on Monday. We'll do WandaVision. We'll find out if we were right about WandaVision on Monday. And I'm sure we'll have other stuff to get to.
We should do the final season of Call My Agent once we've watched it, because I think that
I'm still watching.
I know. And I can only assume it's because of the yeoman-like work of this podcast that it is now like the spotlight on Netflix for its new season. Yeah. It's the power of our mics.
Great talking to you, man. Keep your financial portfolio safe and diversified. And just watch out for those short sellers, brother.
Do you have any tips for me? Do you want to take them off air?
We should do it offline.
I think I'm going to go long on CDs coming back.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye.